Forget walking. Boston Dynamics Atlas is sprinting, crawling, and even busting out dance moves that look eerily human. Is it a cool trick or glimpse of the future? Let's break it down. From awkward beasts to Atlas, the evolution of Boston Dynamics bots. Atlas wasn't always the slick, backflipping humanoid it is today. In the 80s and 90s, Boston Dynamics was cranking out robot dogs on overdrive. Four-legged machines built to sprint, hop, and chew up rough terrain. Their star athlete? That was the Cheetah, a spindly metal speed demon that hit 28.3 miles per hour. For context, that's edging out Usain Bolt's fastest sprint. Not bad for a robot that looked like a skeleton chasing ghosts on a treadmill. Thanks to DARPA, the same government agency that funds all sorts of futuristic sci-fi grade tech, Boston Dynamics had the cash to push these crazy prototypes further. By 2018, they introduced the Spot Mini, a smaller, lighter robot dog weighing just 65 pounds. Don't let its size fool you, though. This little beast came packed with multiple depth cameras, a solid-state gyro, and proprioceptive sensors. Translation? It had enough tech stuffed inside to walk autonomously for 90 minutes without a recharge, making it one of the most advanced four-legged bots of its time. But when it came to bipedal robots, the ones designed to mimic human movement, Boston Dynamics hit a wall. The first ever Atlas prototype dropped in 2013, and honestly, it was awkward. Standing 6 feet tall and weighing a hefty 330 pounds, it looked more like a construction machine in cosplay than an actual humanoid. Its exposed wiring, bulky hydraulic system, and oversized feet made it clunky and stiff. Gil Pratt, the DARPA program manager at the time, even joked that Atlas moved like a one-year-old child just learning to walk. And he wasn't wrong. The New York Times was a bit more generous, calling it a giant though shaky step toward humanoids. But let's be real. The first Atlas was far from the sleek, almost too human machine Boston Dynamics is flexing today, and that's where the story starts to get interesting. Evolution in motion, parkour, backflips, and beyond. Fast forward just a few years, and Atlas was suddenly pulling stunts that no toddler, or honestly most adults, could even dream of. By 2016, the team had untethered Atlas, freeing it from its external power supply. It could walk through snow, recover after being shoved, and pop back onto its feet like a giant mechanical jack-in-the-box. That was the first real taste of what Atlas could become. Then came 2017, when Boston Dynamics dropped a video that had the internet losing its mind. Atlas wasn't just walking, it was leaping onto platforms, turning midair, and pulling off the world's first robotic backflip. It wasn't graceful, but still, seeing a 300-pound humanoid flipping backwards was like watching the future happen in front of you. By 2020, things got even weirder. Atlas was now dancing, literally dancing, in sync with another robot to Do You Love Me? And the creepiest part, it wasn't stiff or jerky like most robots you'd seen. The movements were smooth, rhythmic, almost human. People didn't know whether to laugh, cheer, or start preparing bunkers. In 2021, Atlas took things up a notch with a full-blown parkour course. It ran, vaulted over beams, jumped gaps, and landed with a gymnast's confidence. By this point, Boston Dynamics wasn't just showing off hardware. They were flexing about how close Atlas was getting to actual human agility. And then, in 2024, came the real game changer. Boston Dynamics ditched hydraulics and went fully electric. That one move made Atlas lighter, quieter, more energy efficient, and most importantly, way more flexible. It was like upgrading from a diesel truck to a Tesla Plaid. You just knew everything was about to get a whole lot smoother. The electric Atlas, quieter, smarter, stronger. The switch to electric wasn't just a small tune-up. It transformed Atlas into something uncomfortably close to human. Gone was the bulky, noisy hydraulic frame. Instead, the new Atlas is lean, compact, and eerily sleek, almost like the difference between an early iPhone prototype and the latest model. With its lighter build, Atlas suddenly had a wider range of motion, letting it twist, bend, and move in ways that most humans would find impossible. Watching it in action feels like you're looking at an athlete with superhuman joints. It can lean forward into a sprint with perfect balance, tuck its torso when slowing down, crawl on all fours, and even transition into a handstand before flipping back upright. And yes, it can breakdance. That's not an exaggeration. Boston Dynamics actually made Atlas bust out moves that looked like a choreographed performance. The freakiest part? The movements aren't robotic at all. They're fluid, natural, and downright believable, thanks to what Boston Dynamics calls athletic intelligence. Think of it as a mix of deep learning algorithms and model predictive control. Basically, Atlas doesn't just execute movements, it anticipates them. It studies how humans move, predicts the dynamics in real time, and adjusts its body on the fly. On top of that, Atlas is now rocking 360-degree swiveling joints at its hips, waist, arms, and even its neck. That means it can twist its body in ways that make your spine ache just imagining it. It's like watching a gymnast, a contortionist, and a parkour athlete all rolled into one machine that doesn't get tired, sore, or injured. So yeah, the electric Atlas isn't just quieter and stronger, it's smarter, smoother, and way scarier to watch. And that's only scratching the surface of what powers these new moves. The Nvidia partnership, AI muscle behind the moves. All right, so let's peel back the curtain and talk about what's really powering Atlas under the hood. Because no matter how smooth its backflips look, all that gymnastic wizardry comes down to brains, not just brawn. And in Atlas's case, those brains are coming straight from Nvidia. Boston Dynamics teamed up with the GPU giant to plug Atlas into the Jetson Thor computing platform. Think of it like giving the robot the AI equivalent of a Ferrari engine. Compact, insanely fast, and built to handle the split-second decision-making that keeps Atlas from face-planting mid-vault. But raw power isn't enough. This is where Isaac Lab comes into play, Nvidia's VR-like training ground for robots. Picture this. Instead of throwing a multi-million-dollar humanoid into the real world and hoping it doesn't trip over a box, engineers drop it into a photorealistic simulation first. Inside this digital sandbox, Atlas can practice lifting, crawling, running, or even something as mundane as picking up a cardboard box. The software feeds it synthetic data, different lighting, textures, positions, until it nails the movement perfectly. Only then does it graduate to real-world testing. And then there's Isaac SIM, which is like the connective tissue holding it all together. It provides a hyper-detailed virtual environment for reinforcement learning, which is basically trial and error on steroids. Atlas can run through thousands of scenarios virtually, learning what works and what doesn't before it ever sets foot in reality. That's the secret sauce. Boston Dynamics isn't just building machines, they're raising athletes in simulation, letting them fail 1,000,000 times digitally so they move flawlessly in the real world. It's no wonder Atlas can twist, flip, and adapt on the fly. It's been living in a virtual boot camp designed to make it terrifyingly good at being human. Real-world purpose beyond the robot Olympics. Now here's the thing. Atlas doing backflips is cool for YouTube clicks, but Boston Dynamics didn't spend decades building this machine just to flex online. The bigger vision? Turning Atlas into a lifesaver. DARPA, the same defense agency that poured cash into Boston Dynamics' early quadrupeds, has been funding Atlas with one primary goal: search and rescue. Picture a collapsed building after an earthquake, rubble everywhere, unstable ground, and tight spaces that would put human rescuers at risk. That's where Atlas comes in, navigating the chaos, carrying supplies, and even clearing paths for survivors. And it's not just disasters. Atlas is being shaped into a workplace companion too. Boston Dynamics has already demoed it in Hyundai facilities, where the humanoid is capable of picking up, carrying, and sequencing parts on the assembly line. It's the kind of grunt work that leads to repetitive strain injuries for humans, but barely makes Atlas break a sweat. Well, if it could sweat. What's wild is how Atlas can slide between these roles. One moment it's clambering over debris like a rescue dog, the next it's acting as a warehouse worker organizing inventory. That dual-use capability is what makes the bot both exciting and unsettling. Because here's the balancing act. On one hand, Atlas is a tool for safety, efficiency, and productivity. On the other hand, it raises the uncomfortable question: if robots can handle dangerous, boring, or repetitive jobs better than us, what happens to the humans currently doing them? Atlas isn't just showing off with flips, it's hinting at a future workplace where humans might not always be needed. The reactions: awe meets horror. Of course, not everyone is watching Atlas with wide-eyed admiration. For every jaw that drops in amazement, there's another that drops in fear. And Boston Dynamics seems to know it. They've leaned into the creep factor more than once. Take the 2024 video, where Atlas started face down on the floor, only to twist its legs backward, fold itself like origami, and stand up while swiveling its head and waist a full 180 degrees. Sure, it was meant to showcase its new range of motion, but to many viewers it looked less innovation showcase and more deleted scene from a horror flick. The Verge didn't hold back either, calling it a swiveling, shape-shifting nightmare. Online reactions have been just as split. Some people make jokes to cope, calling Atlas the final evolution of the Pixar lamp, or dubbing it the origin story of our apocalypse. Others can't stop applauding, with one user simply saying, "That's the most fluid human-like motion I've ever seen in a robot." Bravo, guys. And that duality is what makes Atlas so fascinating. We've hit this weird sweet spot where a machine is finally moving with human fluidity, but in surpassing our agility, it trips into the uncanny valley. It's familiar and alien at the same time, impressive enough to clap, but eerie enough to keep you awake at night wondering what it'll do next. The bigger picture: are we building Skynet? And that's where we zoom out. Because Boston Dynamics isn't alone in this humanoid arms race. Tesla is pushing its Optimus bot. Clone Robotics is developing Clone Alpha, a humanoid with biomimetic muscles and even a vascular system that eerily mimics ours. Over at Mercedes, Apptronic's Apollo is being tested on manufacturing lines, while BMW is working with Figure 02 for similar roles. That means humanoids won't just be lab experiments for much longer, they'll be co-workers in factories, logistics, maybe even hospitality. But here's the kicker: these companies aren't redesigning workplaces for robots. Instead, they're designing robots to fit perfectly into human spaces. Same tools, same environment. Which sounds efficient, until you realize it also makes humans easier to replace. And if that wasn't unsettling enough, there's talk of robots eventually being able to replicate themselves in manufacturing plants. Imagine a future where robots not only outnumber humans, but also build the next generation of their kind without us lifting a finger. That's the paradox Atlas leaves us with. On one hand, it's a marvel of engineering, an agile, flexible machine that could save lives, reduce injuries, and transform industries. On the other hand, it's a glimpse at a world where humans are no longer the only humanoids in the workplace. So the question hangs in the air: are we building helpful assistants that will walk beside us into the future, or are we unknowingly coding the early chapters of our own replacement story? Guess the time will tell. But before that, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more such interesting content.